So it's reported that Daniel Dubois will be out on the February show in Riyadh, February 2025. Now that show, from the rumours that are being circulated around, is actually shaping up to be quite a good show. We're hearing rumours about the likes of Shakur Stevenson. Now I know Shakur Stevenson, but he could be in there Williams Zepeda. Now I would consider that, one of the fights where it's like, oh, I'll watch that, because at least one guy knows how to entertain, the other guy knows how to cure insomnia. So I'm sure those styles will blend together nicely. So that'll be a good fight. What I would imagine who'd be headlining would be Dubois, because Joshua won't be headlining. We know that, injuries and things like that. So we don't know what the situation is with Anthony Joshua. Fury Usyk is happening December the 21st. Ain't no way either of those guys are going to be even remotely thinking about fighting. Maybe don't even think about fighting again, but if they don't think about fighting, they won't be thinking about it until June, July, maybe even August of next year. So we can write them well and truly off. Then it becomes a case of, right, well, Dubois, he'll obviously maybe headline, maybe he won't, but he'll be on the show nevertheless, you would imagine. Against whom? Now, Dubois is allowed a voluntary, given the fact that Kabayel versus Bacoli has been ordered as an eliminator to determine a mandatory. Now, the IBF do this weird thing. They didn't always do this. I don't recall them always doing it. They do this weird thing where they don't rank, or they don't have number 1 and number 2 ranked. Now, I don't know, is that just maybe a heavyweight? Because they started doing that a little bit over the last few years. I don't recall them doing that in the past, although I wasn't really keeping tracks on how their rankings were in the past. But I don't understand how you'd have a top 15 with only 13 fighters. I mean, surely, having an extra 2 people there is not going to cause that much damage or ruckus, you would imagine. But we look at the rankings, and obviously Daniel Dubois, if he was to have a voluntary, it would have to be someone in the top 15. And I know when, I think it was the video I did on Joseph Parker calling out Daniel Dubois, you had a lot of people commenting saying it's a bloody disgrace that Joseph Parker is not ranked, blah, 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 blah. Well, the only reason they didn't rank Joseph Parker is he's an interim champion. Now, an interim champion is not the same as being a full champion. It's not even close. It's a glorified mandatory. That's essentially what an interim title is. You can sell it as, oh, it's for the interim title and all that jazz, but it's essentially just a glorified mandatory spot. But the one thing I guess you could say, is it a hindrance? I don't really know. Is it a hindrance? Because I'm pretty sure you could probably still fight a champion as interim champion. It just means that they won't rank you. But I would be pretty sure that there wouldn't be... Well, I'll give you an example, actually. Here's a prime example. Carl Frampton, when he fought Josh Warrington in 2018, he was the WBO interim champion. He won that title. I think he won it. Might have won it off Nonito, or might have fought Nonito Donaire. I know he fought Donaire in Belfast. Not sure if that was for the interim title, but I know when he fought in Windsor Park against... I think his name was Luke Jackson. Very forgettable opponent. I haven't heard from him before or since. I think he's Australian, actually. I know that was for the interim title. Whether that was a defence or whether that was him actually winning it, I'm not 100% sure. But nevertheless, he was able to go and fight Josh Warrington for his world title. So it doesn't mean because you're an interim champion, you're exempt from, or you're excluded from fighting other champions. No, I think Frampton had to vacate that title, so that might be what Joseph Parker does, or potentially. And I mentioned Joseph Parker because he's not in the rankings. He could potentially wait it out and see what happens with Usyk Fury. If ever a man is overdue a title shot, it is 100% Joseph Parker. I've said that once and I will reiterate that. He's long overdue one, 100%. When I look at the heavyweight rankings, some fights there... I know Frank was mentioning Fabio Wadley, who's ranked number 12, and he wants to let that fight simmer. I know Sky were reporting that Dubois was given the green light for that fight, but Frank is saying he wants to let that fight simmer. I'm sure that Wadley, off the back of that Fraser Clark performance, especially if you did a show, well, I'll just do a show in Ipswich, which would be his hometown. I don't think you do it at Portland Road yet, which is Ipswich Town's football team's home stadium. But is there an arena really big enough for boxing in Ipswich? Never been to Ipswich, so I don't know. Forgive me if there's people from Ipswich saying, well, clearly he could fight here. Yeah, I've never been. I'm not really, it's not a city I would associate with boxing events. So Frank could easily get him in at the O2 or the OVO in the Wembley Arena. He could easily do them. So I think Frank is probably looking at it from a business point of view and thinking, what's the point in putting Fabio Wadley in there with Daniel Dubois, potentially lose when I can make a bit of money off him, and then see what happens. So I can kind of get that from a promotional, managerial, everything, business point of view. I get that. Justice Hooney, Guido Vialeno, and Jared Anderson, 13, 14, and 15 respectively. Hooney, I've said it once, I'll say it again, never really rated him. Vianello, I think say his name, Italian heavyweight. Yeah, he beat Arslan Makhmedov there. I consider that an upset. I really did. That might be an option. But would you see? I think with Frank, if he's gonna do it, and with Turkey as well, if they're gonna do it Riyadh season, that'd be pay-per-view obviously. They're gonna want, especially if it's a headline act. You're not, you can't. You know, I know Fury and Joshua have done Ngannou, but that was, yes, they were well, they should have been mismatched for Fury. It wasn't, but you know what I mean. It's a mismatch on paper. But the name, the crossover appeal, the gimmick, essentially the gimmick is the word I'm really looking for, is what sold that as a pay-per-view. I wouldn't say the three of those guys, neither would really sell them as a pay-per-view. Otto Wallin and Derek Chisora next. I don't know how, well, I suppose Derek Chisora got a win over Gerald Washington, which is, yeah, Washington was no great shakes, but I suppose that Joyce win has boosted him a little bit. Okay, so still though, number 10. Fabio Wadley is just beaten Fraser Clark, British champion, you know. Yeah. Otto Wallin. Now, if Daniel Dubois is serious about potentially going through with an Alexander Usyk rematch, then I would consider Otto Wallin. I think he's had a win since the Anthony Joshua loss. I think he has had at least one comeback fight. If he was to... Now, Otto Wallin, I've always said this, is Alexander Usyk if you got him off Wish. And that's being generous. Otto Wallin is nowhere near as good. He's nowhere near as fast. He's nowhere near as technical. He's just a crapper version of Usyk. A much crapper. You got him off Wish, you know, and then you wonder why it's not working. There you go. That's Otto Wallin. Now, as I said, stylistically, there are similarities there. If he really wants to push for an Usyk rematch and try and go for undisputed, that might be, from a stylistic point of view, the match to make. The only thing is, though, with Turki Al-Sheikh, because he's the one who's obviously going to have the final say, would he be the one who would look at Otto Wallin and think, well, you fought on one of my shows, you were crap. You were. And now I don't want you again. Because I think with Turkey, it could be a case if you come and try and you do, you know, give as good as you get, you know, yeah, we'll have you back. We'll see what'll happen if maybe there's a bit of controversy. But I think if you just go up and, like, you know, it's just crap, which he really was that night, and then just retired after 5 rounds. I just can't see them doing it. I was going to say Fraser Clark, no. Filip Hrgovic and Anthony Joshua are the next two. Filip Hrgovic, not fought since the Dubois loss. I don't really like the idea of him getting another crack straight off the bat, at least earn a win, and Joshua won't be in, we know that. Ajagba, Sanchez, and Zhang. Sanchez needs a win. Frank Sanchez, I always said he was a dark horse, and he was able to move a little bit in that first round against Adji Kabayel, and he won that round. Fully fit, no injuries, Frank Sanchez beats Kabayel for me. And I think Frank Sanchez is a very, very, very dangerous heavyweight when he's fighting fit. Frank Sanchez, a Cuban fighter, defected to America many years ago now. For him, the money that's probably being on offer in some of these Saudi shows, if someone hacked his leg off, he'd probably hop to the ring. Do you know that sort of? And I'm sure he's probably not the only one. There's probably many fighters who would do that, who would go to these Saudi shows fighting injured for some of the money potentially on the line. So I get why he didn't pull out of the Adji Kabayel fight. I get that. He lost. I don't think it's a true reflection. So let's wait and see there. Ajagba versus Dubois. That actually could be a really good scrap. That genuinely could be a very good scrap. Zhang, Bakoli, and Kabayel. Can't see him taking Kabayel. Can't see him taking Bakoli. Zhang, on the other hand, I mean, it's an in-house fight. You see, you got to think about it from a marketing point of view, or from a promotional and a business point of view, right? Frank Warren doesn't really want to do Fabio Wadley. He wanted to let that fight simmer. Okay, fair enough, right? You're not going to have many more years with Zhang, and he is a Queensbury fighter, so if Dubois loses, it's staying in Queensbury. you know, and then you could try and do another fight with Zhang Zhang. What you're not really going to have the time for with Zhang Zhang is to have him fight, maybe say a rematch with Parker, potentially lose again, have him fight some other contender and, you know, potentially lose again, go through a camp. The man is, what, 41 years old. So you don't actually have as much time with Zhang Zhang as you would with a Fabio Wadley, for example. And you maybe might not make, certainly in the West, if you did it in China, different story. But if in the UK, you're not going to make as much money, you would imagine, with Zhang Zhang. Although he is entertaining and he is funny. You know, I don't even know if it's intentionally funny, but he is a character, Zhang Zhang, which is what we like in boxing. And that's actually not a bad. I would say, if I was to be, if you would say to me, gee, here's a five, or put a bet down, who out of the top 15 is really top 13 do you think is most likely going to fight Dubois next if Frank and Turkey have their way? I would say Zhang Zhang. I think it just from a business point of view, it makes sense. You'd make Dubois favourite. There is danger there, certainly. Zhang Zhang may be the biggest puncher in the heavyweight division. So he may very well be. I mean, this, and it's not just with one punch like Wilder, it's with both hands. So Dubois would need to be extremely careful. And he'd need to, like, defense-wise, I thought his defense, he needed to be defensively sound against Joshua. And Joshua was very sloppy, but Dubois, you could see there was improvements there. He can't let, like, one left hand from Zhang go through, because he doesn't even need to hit you full force to have you in all sorts of trouble. That's how heavy-handed and powerful Zhang Zhang is. And again, he's a Queensberry fighter, so it's in-house. You'd probably be able to run it back with a rematch, so you'd make money on both fights for Frank Warren. You're not really going to have the time to build Zhang Zhang up to any kind of higher than he already is. And then, as I said, you know, if he wins, stays in-house. If he loses, all right, Dubois moves on to bigger and better things. Maybe catch Zhang out, or you have one more fight with Zhang. You see what I mean? He's got one fight out the door most likely anyway. Whereas Wardley, plenty of time, plenty of years, you know, stuff like that. So if I was a betting man, I would actually say that the two most likely opponents, oh, and I will say with Zhang Zhang, if you can survive the early rounds, his stamina is so terrible that you would favour Dubois to just take over and stop him in the mid to late rounds. The two fighters who I would say are most likely to fight Dubois next would be Parker, Joseph Parker, if he just probably either vacate the IBF or the WBO interim title, or maybe wait and see if the winner of Fury Usyk just vacates it, because then it becomes the unification. And then it's an easy sell. You know, it's heavyweight unification, Dubois, Parker, easy sell. Just like that. And if it's not him, it would be, I would imagine, Zhang Zhang, for the reasons I just outlined there. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Daniel Dubois is such an entertaining fighter, and he's been on such a good run of form that I'm just looking forward to seeing who he's in there with. I'm looking forward to seeing improvements, if there is any. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Until next time, peace.